In this video, we're going to be taking a look at my first footage with the Canon R5 Mark II. We have 4K and 8K RAW 60 frames per second, 4K 120 frames per second. We're going to see how 8K RAW edits on the computer. I'll be showing you why C-Log 2 is my favorite setting on the camera. And then at the end of the video, I'll give you a hidden surprise of what my new favorite feature is that's been quietly swept under the rug. This is the Canon R5 Mark II initial video review. What's up guys, this is the R5 Mark II and the new video features are absolutely amazing. Hands down the best feature is going to be C-Log 2. I've been testing with some bears and puffins here the last couple days in Kodiak, Alaska, and the bears are kind of easy to record, but the puffins are super difficult because they're very tiny and they're very fast. So capturing footage with them worked pretty good. There were some issues when it came to finding them with the autofocus. I changed some settings around. I ended up moving the acceleration of the tracking on the R5 Mark II video-wise for the puffins, and then it helped out a little bit better. But they move so fast and they're so tiny. I was shooting down at them onto some rocks and everything. Overall, I mean, it captured way better footage than I could ever capture. And if I had to like use manual focus or something. So I'm really impressed with how everything came out. I think the 4K RAW looks pretty good and the 8K RAW is surprisingly smooth on editing with the computer. I haven't needed any proxy files. I have the MacBook M2 Max and that has been working really well. I had some issues with the 8K on the R5 and that was in I forget what codec I used to use. I didn't use it for a while because it was just too much of a hassle to edit to and everything. I shot a lot of 4K 120 frames per second. That is my go-to when it comes to wildlife videography. And I think it works really well, just as good as the Canon R5 Mark I. But I'm really excited to show you how C-Log 2 is so good. If you guys have never edited log footage before, it's very boring and flat when you bring it into your editing program here. I'm in Adobe Premiere Pro and I'm going to show you let's go with this puffin one because it really brings out the colors and like the orange and everything. This is what it looks like when you first get it. It's super duper flat, as you can see, kind of like demotivating in a way. You're like, what am I supposed to do with this? But I'm going to show you exactly my workflow on how I bring C-Log 2 to YouTube in the full editing process in between. So let's get started. First, what we're going to do is obviously be in Premiere Pro. We're going to go to the Lumetri panel and this is what it's going to look like when you first open it. You're going to make sure your clip is selected and the first thing you're going to do is check the link in the description. You're going to need to download this file here. This is the conversion LUT. This brings C-Log 2 into the Rec 709. It goes from that gray dull image to that more vibrant and more contrasty looking image. Let's just show you what it looks like already. That's before. Once you apply it, already it looks pretty good. The next thing we're going to do is now adjust it like we would a photo. And the best way to do this is to open the coloring panel on the Adobe Premiere website or program, and we're going to click Lumetri Scopes up here, and you see this waveform here. This is basically what we're going to edit to. This is, in a long story short, a way to just make sure your highlights aren't overexposed and your blacks are black enough and everything like that. So what I like to do first thing is just I'll increase the saturation up quite a bit to make it where it should be for these videos. And then I'm gonna increase the contrast a little bit. We don't want the whites to touch and we don't want the blacks to touch. Blacks are on the bottom, whites are on the top. So right there is good. We wanna keep it between 90 and 100 for the highlights and 0 to 10 for the blacks. Blacks are gonna need a little bit more adjustment, so we can bring the blacks down a little bit. We don't want them to touch 0, so almost touching 0 there. I think that's good. And the highlights are a little bit overexposed. We could see that touching there, and that looks good right about here. Okay, so now we have the base adjustment. This is good for a lot of people. I think for professional content, this looks really, really good. I personally like to use my own presets. There's a link in the description if you want to use them. A shameless plug, but What I really like about these presets, and specifically Alaskan Dream is my favorite, that's going to look a little too much right there, but I always bring the intensity down, and we're only going to do like 30% intensity, and the difference is it just gives the video a stylistic look. Just to do a little bit something before and after, give it some color, maybe we'll do like 40%. And, you know, I really like that. You can also adjust the white balance a little bit. And I actually really like this. I know it's a lot to look at with this waveform and everything. Just make sure your whites aren't touching and your blacks aren't touching. That's a basic way on editing C-Log 2 to bring it to life before and after. Okay, so this video here is with 8K, and it's a very quick video. It's just a tufted puffin sitting here on the ledge, and then this guy jumps off right next to him. And this is live preview, no proxy with the R5. I'm going to hit play, and you can see that it plays really smoothly. We slowed the footage down 50% because we shot this in 8K 60 frames per second. Once again, I'll show you the properties here. We got 8K 60 frames per second. It's only 9 gigabytes, not a big file. And you can see it scrubs through really nicely. It plays really nicely. It does take a second to hit play, but then it plays smoothly. So that's 8K. It does edit pretty nicely on the Mac. If you've been kind of hesitant on using 8K and you have a decent computer, you guys can get away with it. It's much easier. Now, I'm typically not going to use 8K. I really prefer 4K. And this is not a video comparing 4K fine versus 4K log versus 8K and all that. That needs its own dedicated testing with its own studio lighting and everything, because all that matters when it comes to testing out footage. This video is just real world comparison showing everything that the camera is capable of and what I prefer to use. Like I said earlier, 4K 120 frames per second is my favorite way to shoot wildlife videos. I use it about 90% of the time, and then we'll do like 8K a little bit, and then we'll do real-time video a little bit. 4K 120 is that's my money maker right there. This camera has so many features. It's got C-Log 1, I think, C-Log 2, C-Log 3. It's got RAW. You need to be using C-Log 2. It gives you the most amount of dynamic range. And let me just show you real quick what that means when I'm using C-Log 2. So if I just show you what this looked like before, pretty dull looking. This is 8K RAW once again. Here's my coloring and everything. But let's take a look at just what the highlights can be recovered to when we look down at the whites. This on any other profile is going to be blown out because they are just pure white. And the dynamic range on C-Log 3 or C-Log or shooting in a normal color profile is just a little bit too intense. And C-Log 2 just gives you that extra bit of range to edit with. And I believe I even kind of overexposed this puffin's white when I first shot the video. But when we reduce the highlights, you can see we're recovering all of the detail here. And it just makes everything so really nice to edit to. I highly recommend taking advantage of C-Log 2 in the Canon R5 Mark II. So like I said at the beginning of this video, my favorite feature is something that's not talked about enough, and it's right here. Let's play it for you guys. Look at this. The puffins don't fly that slow. This is 240 frames per second, and this guy here as well. This is what it looked like in real time. Let's just play that again with real time. We're gonna change this back to 100%, and this is how fast that goes. But I mean, that's insane. To get now this, if you're shooting birds in flight, I highly recommend using the 240 frames per second. It works super duper nice. I'm really happy with the 10 times slow motion. It is only 2K or 2048 by 1080, so it's a little bit on the lower resolution side of things. I was kind of hoping they'd do 4K 240, but they didn't. And it's not going to be something I use a lot because it's going to take up so much space, and it's a little too slow for most things. But for these fast birds, I'm so impressed with 240 frames per second. And I just want to say it's probably my favorite feature so far besides the C-Log 2, just because it's something new. So I'll get to experiment and get whole new footage that I wasn't able to capture before. Canon also added one new additional feature to the R5 Mark II that the R5 didn't have. And what that is the ability to use audio in slow motion footage like 120 and 240 frames per second. How to do that is you're going to disable high frame rate on your R5 Mark II, and then in the regular video settings, you're just going to click the frame rate you want, whether it's 120 or 240 FPS. So that's a pretty cool feature for someone like me that is talking during a video and wanted to get some footage, or you want to get some animal noises and you're recording in slow motion, like a bear growling or something, and you have the slow motion footage and the audio. It definitely works for some people. I'm going to be kind of sticking without the audio just because it's a little easier for me to edit with and everything. But one of the best features about that is not needing to be locked in at 30 frames per second. You can change it to 24 frames per second or whatever you want your timeline to be on Adobe Premiere Pro. All right, well, that's all I got with the video of the R5 Mark II. And my next video is going to be about those puffins. I photographed them yesterday and the day before, and it was just an absolute amazing experience, and it deserves its whole YouTube video. But I think that we'll just kind of leave that for the next video. If you learned anything from this, or want to support my channel, you can subscribe or like the video. It definitely helps me out the most. I'm going to leave you with this video here. It's going to show you how I set up my camera as a hybrid photographer to quickly switch between photo and video seamlessly. And that is all I have. Thanks for watching. Bye.